I want you all to think of this as adjusting the calendar and, yeah, 2 weeks being 1 week. I think we can do that, right? Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to the weekly navel-gazing session where I talk about all the things I did last week, all the books I read last week, and ramble about what I want to do the coming week. Sort of, you know. And yes, I'm aware that we didn't do this last week, and I'll explain why. Sort of, but yeah. I'm aware of it. So let's get started with the whole idea and look at all the books I read since we last talked. And as I said, I went on a trip, so that my reading was somewhat less than usual. I did, however, finish Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay, and it's a fantastic book. I love it. I will talk about it in a video at some point. I did a quick read of Bartleby the Scrivener by Herman Melville, which is a fantastic short story, and if you haven't read it, go read it. It's really cool. And if you say, I prefer not to, then, well, look at what happened to Bartleby, right? Anyway, great story. I enjoyed it. It's good. And then I did read a lot of what's it called? Dreams of Steel by Glenn Cook, which is the 5th or 6th, depending on like which order of books you go by. Black Company Chronicle. I'm reading it again, and it's great. More people need to read more Black Company, and the more I read it, the more I, become convinced that this is probably one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. I did also read some other books about all kinds of other stuff. I read a book about the neo-paganism, Germanic neo-paganism, and Asatru and its stuff. I did that. I'm currently reading Rhetorics of Fantasy by Farah Mendelssohn, which is a fantastic book. If you want to know more about, well, the art of fantasy and how to think about fantasy, I can recommend this one. It's a good academic book on fantasy, and yeah, may help me articulate myself better in the future, so there's that. And I think that's mostly what I read over the last weeks. I did some, usual Terry Pratchett rereading, which in this case is Guards, which I do like. And it just got mentioned as an example in Rhetorics of Fantasy, so there's that. Really cool. Just saying. So that's all the stuff that I read over the last 2 weeks. And the question is like, what will I be reading next, sort of? Well, I'll be reading A Song for Arbonne by Guy Gavriel Kay next. That's literally the next book I will start, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's apparently sort of inspired by the Albigensian crusade, and I've done some university work on those specific crusades and the whole heresy situation in 13th century France. I really, really am looking forward to this one, and we'll probably nerd out heavily about Cathars, Waldensians, and papal decrees. Anyway, that's the next fiction book that I plan to read. Beyond that, I have no idea. I literally have no idea. I will finish Rhetorics of Fantasy in, well, probably today or tomorrow, and then I need to figure out what I will read next, and that is certainly something that we'll come back to. There might be The Nature of Fascism by Roger Griffin. That's on my list of things I really want to read soon. There is, of course, the wonderful The Vikings and the Victorians by Andrew Vaughan, but I still need to actually physically scan that book, so that might take until, like, I don't know, further on this week. So there's a lot of academic and non-fiction work are lying around that I really plan to read. There's another book, Graham Hutton, The Triumph of the Moon. Norman Hutton, the Triumph of the Moon, which is about Wicca and modern paganism in that regard. I'm probably going to read that just out of pure interest, and it kind of complements the Norse revival transformations in Germanic neo-paganism book with the more like Wicca, slightly more Celtic influenced kind of part of modern, art religions and stuff like that. So those are plans of books that I will read in the coming weeks, whatever. Definitely other fiction once I'm done with A Song for Arbonne, but I have no idea what that will be. Yeah, I'll figure it out as I go along. There's stuff that I want to reread. There's stuff that I want to try for the first time. We'll see. If you have suggestions, put them down in the comments. I will obviously ignore them, but you can still tell me about books, which I always love to hear about because, I'm interested in books sometimes. So, videos. Well, I made one. I made my book haul video, which it seems to be a video that some of you have enjoyed, so I'm glad for that. It just felt like a good thing to make fun of now that I've actually bought a physical book for the first time in, I guess, 5 years. Funnily enough, I feel like the last physical books I bought were 2 Chronicles of the Albigensian Crusade, maybe 3. I'm still missing those physical books. They're somewhere in this place, and but there's 3 chronicles, contemporary chronicles of the Albigensian Crusade, one by William de Puylaurens and one by Michel de Vaux-de-Cernay, and a third one by, I think, Michel Tudelin. And I think I bought all 3 of them, but I can't find them right now. So that's the last books I bought, and that must have been in 2017-ish, 18-ish. So I felt buying an actual book deserves a book haul, because when will I ever get the chance to do another one? And I had fun recording it. It made me giggle, and, I don't always want to be just grim and angry and stuff, so I figured, poking some fun at what we do here in the BookTube sphere might be appreciated, so I hope you enjoyed that. And that's all I did video-wise. I am obviously planning to do more videos, don't worry. So yeah, what kind of videos am I planning to record? Well, I said I want to do something about Guy Gavriel Kay, and I still want to do that. I'm still struggling to figure out how to do it, where to go with it, but I want to, do a series on, lenses on fantasy, or how we can read fantasy, different approaches to fantasy, something like that. And I want to use Guy Gavriel Kay's books that I've read so far, that being those 3 from the Fionnavar Tapestry and the, Tigana, and I guess once I've read A Song for Arbonne, that will also fit in there. And I just want to use those books because from what I've read so far, each of them can be used to explore or present one specific way of reading fantasy or looking at fantasy. Now, I want to mansplain shit to you. That's my point. I want to mansplain shit to you, and Guy Gavriel Kay, another man, might just be the perfect vehicle for that, and that's the goal there. I just need to structure it in a way that makes sense. Those will probably be shorter videos. I don't know. Well, shorter than the anti-Semitism video, for one, but that's something that I'm looking at. Another thing that I've been looking at is apparently recently people caught up to what I said last year. Remember, I saw a video by Murphy Napier out there on reading is different now, and Jen the Bookworm did one, and apparently it's all about how social media has changed reading, and I feel like I've talked about that last year with a video about BookTube and how we stopped reading and learned to love the book. I feel like I said a lot of the systemic elements that I find in there that I find troubling. But you know how it is, the prophet in its own country or whatever, no one, well, not no one, a lot of people watched it back then, but I feel like the people that are talking about it now didn't watch it, so maybe I'll chime into that discourse. But there's a second layer there that I just really don't like, and I think it's, it's a fundamental issue where people once again conflate the systematic problem with a personal problem, which is obviously rooted in neoliberalism and the idea of individual responsibility instead of systematic responsibility. But then again, I guess blaming the kids is easier than actually dismantling capitalism. So maybe I should not do another video, because who wants to hear that shit, right? So we'll see. But depending on whether there's more videos about this subject, I might feel angry enough to just rant about how we all should, get our shit together, dismantle social media and capitalism, and enjoy reading again, sort of. right? We will see. But that's sort of where I'm going right now. What else will happen? Well, I am going to continue with the anti-Semitism project. See, in Vienna, I did give a quick presentation on my whole argument, which is a threefold argument about the problems with fantasy, rooted in, well, human history, history of fantasy, and a systematic element in there. And I certainly figured out which parts I need to put more work in to make the argument, well, more coherent and comprehensive. And that's sort of where I'm looking at reading books right now. The obviously the Vikings and Victorians book plays a role there, because it's very much about the construction of a Viking identity or connections to the Vikings in Victorian age, and the reception and reevaluation of Norse mythology and Norse sagas in the 19th century. And that obviously plays into my whole argument, which is the history of fantasy, how it was influenced by things that happened in especially the Romantic era in the 19th century. So there's more. It just feels like a huge task at the moment. I'm kind of worried about that one. So this is this is why the book haul said, did I go too far? Because, yeah, I spent money on a book that may end up in a YouTube video that no one will watch. You know what I mean? So we will see if I may have gone too far. Because this is where we talk about my mental health again. See, here's the thing. I mean, I've been very open about it. I talked about it. I'm getting medication right now for depression because, yeah, things weren't good last year. And I slowly feel those might be starting to work. Or it's just, that spring's coming around and things are generally getting better. But the problem is, if you're taking antidepressants, there's a chance that you might just fall into the opposite end and become sort of almost manic in a way. And I'm starting to worry that I might go down that route. Don't worry, I'm obviously checking in with a doctor and everything. So, but there is that point where I'm starting to do more and more research for something that at the end of the day will end up being a bunch of YouTube videos, or maybe, if I'm really lucky and confident, can turn into some sort of paper that I can present somewhere or whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm beginning to read more and more nonfiction about all kinds of elements. Do I need to read an entire book on Asatru? No, I don't. I wanted to check one specific thing, and that book has a chapter on, fantasy books and its connection to, like, neo-paganism. And that's great. But I read the entire thing. And do I need to read an entire book on Wicca? No, of course not. But it feels like it's interesting, and I begin to dive into all these kind of things. And I'm kind of worried that I might lose sight of goals, or whatever you want to call it, in favor of just diving deeper into this and creating these weird, everything connects to everything fantasies in my brain. And then there is this magnum opus of like a fantastic 10-hour video, and hopefully not, but you know what I mean. And I'm beginning to worry that I might be going down that route. So I'm trying to be careful and balance my nonfiction reading and academic reading with fiction reading. So I keep, my sights on what I actually want to do. And I'll try to, begin structuring the next part of this project relatively soon. So maybe I can actually, keep focusing or keep focused. That's sort of where I start to worry that I might lose, my grip there and become overly enthusiastic for a project that at the end of the day, well, might give me 500 views, which is maybe not worth 3 months of work at the end. Obviously I know a shitload of stuff afterwards, after reading for 3 or 4 months, but I still need to eat, is my point. And unfortunately, reading about the history of anti-Semitism does not get me paid at all. and so I'm kind of worried about that. It's sort of a bit of a thing that's been keeping me awake, sort of. But we will see how I'll handle that. As I said, I'm definitely, going to check in with doctors about, my state in the next. I already got an appointment, is my point there. But I'm aware of it, so I may have already gone too far because I spent, 20 quid, $20 on an academic book that at the end of the day will maybe contribute like 2 minutes of a video that will then get like 500 views, which, fair enough. And I'm certainly happy to have read the book afterwards, but, unfortunately, we have not yet dismantled capitalism, is my point here. So there's that. I hope I'll get through all of that in a reasonable way, and I hope I can actually make that large argument about fantasy in a way. I want to engage more with the fantastic and with fantasy on a, I don't want to call it academic level yet, because I feel awkward calling myself like a scholar of fantasy or anything like that, because I don't have like the formal training. I'm reading up on these kind of things, but I'm still an autodidact in this regard. Maybe I've always been wary of calling myself an expert or anything like that, but I want to engage with it on a more academic level, and I feel like maybe me having some background in history and philosophy can add to the discussion or the discourse on on fantasy, that people that just come from like either just a love of fantasy or from like classic literary studies maybe don't have those kind of backgrounds or whatever. So that's my dream, but putting out videos about book hauls might not be the perfect way or path to achieving these goals. Who knows? So that's my rambling for this week. I'll try to actually get videos out over the next couple of days, and I was thinking about maybe doing a live stream on Saturday. I'm still working it out. Need to check out, because there's so many people doing live streams in BookTube nowadays that I don't want to compete or anything, because there's still a small enough audience that I don't feel it's a good idea to stream, have 3 live streams at the same time and whatnot. But maybe I'll do a live stream, just a shorter one, just hang out a bit, talk about, further questions on the anti-Semitism video. If you have any, we can, argue through that and do a bit of a, sort of like Q&A on that kind of stuff, and argue politics and fantasy and where things are going or where things are not going. Because I enjoyed the last live stream, and I figured maybe we can do something of the sort like once per month, and just answer questions if there's further questions or ideas beyond what I did in a video. And in this case, it still would be about the anti-Semitism video, because it's like the largest thing out there. I mean, we could talk about my book haul as well, but probably not worth it. So I'm still considering that on Saturday. If I do that, I'll put up a post, what's it called, a community tab post, and say, yeah, look out, Saturday, there will be. I feel like Saturday is probably the best time to do that kind of thing, because it allows most people from different time zones to Zoom, to look in, and not just, just Europeans or just Americans or whatever. But I feel like that's a good idea, because if I do it on, during the week, I would have to start like, I don't know, I would have to pick either a European or an American audience, is my point. So Saturday 9-ish or whatever might just be the best way of handling this. We will see. I'm thinking about things, which usually takes a lot of time because I'm slow with thinking and stuff. Anyway, I hope you had a good week. I hope you read good books. I hope you had, 2 good weeks. Oh yeah, right, I promised to explain. Yeah, I forgot my camera at a friend's place and had to get it back, and that's why I couldn't, film a video last week. So that's the whole story. I've had my camera back since Friday. Yeah, since Friday. So that's the reason there. Now nothing sinister happened. I just didn't have the camera. And I really hope you had a good time the last 2 weeks, read fantastic books. You're reading good books right now. You're full of energy. Spring is just around the corner, maybe. So get ready for that. And I don't know, read more books. It's always a good idea to read more books. And I'll see you in the next one. And until then, cheers.